In the county courtroom, I was seated at the defense table alongside my lawyer. I looked up just as the jury was about to be called in. My lawyer warned me that if I was convicted of the crime, I could face several years in prison. I did it because I had no choice. Yes, I got a little Rose away. But what would you have done? In my position? I guess I should start from the beginning to explain. I should provide some background. So, do you know why I am sitting here today? My wife Rose and I got married later in life. She was 32 while I was 34. Rose was always a blonde beauty and I fell for her the first time I met her. After a few difficult months, we began to date. I took it seriously and married the following year. We'd both been in a few relationships and I figured that being older and having been around the block a few times would be ideal. It worked for the first 3 years or so. Rose did not work and remained at home. We talked about having children and she seemed to enjoy not working, so I didn't push it. Financially, we were doing well and I was excited to start a family. I did not want her to begin a career only to have to stop to raise a family. Rose was always upbeat and outgoing. That was the problem. Most men thought she was coming on to them and I almost got into a few fights as a result. Sometimes I believe Rose would start something just to get me going, but it never worked. I despised fighting and always tried to avoid confrontations with others. I was always trying to turn the other cheek. This was my problem. Until 2 months ago. I would always withdraw from a fight or a personal challenge. Rose stayed with me because I am not a wimp as many people believe, but I was following my dad's advice from when I was younger. I was always good at school until we moved to my current city. Another state away from my old one. I had to leave my teachers, friends, and everything I enjoyed about my old town behind. I was in 8th grade and the new school was huge and dangerous. I tried not to tell my father so he would not feel bad about the move. He had no choice financially. My mother died 2 years ago and Dad was still dealing with the loss. Rose don't. The school was led by what I would describe as an alpha male bully. Tommy Ballinger was his name. And he had a grudge against me from the start. My first day of school, I was about to leave when a big guy stopped me before I could board the bus. I didn't notice him at first, but when I was pushed to the ground, I looked up and saw a 6.2 monster. That's what he looked like to me. I was a small 5'3" at the time. I am now about 5 feet tall and fly 7. He towered over me on the ground and was accompanied by 2 friends who were only a few inches shorter than him. They ordered me to stand up and hand over my backpack and any money I had. I slowly stood up. And I was the most afraid I'd ever been. I pissed my pants because I was so scared. Looking back, it probably saved me from being beaten by these school thugs. Rose, what's your name, wimp? Tommy questioned me with malice in his voice. Pete Huckabee. I responded with real fear. Rose Dieter, you just got a new name at school. From now on your name will be PC Pete Ash. Hey everyone, take a look at PC Pete. He's simply wet his pants like a baby. Tommy informed the growing crowd around me. I looked around and everyone was laughing at me. I was so terrified that I ran home and did not even get on the bus. Tommy never left me alone after that. He was a junior, so I had to put up with him until he graduated 1 year later. My life was hell for the first 2 years. No girl would date me because I was PC Pete regardless of what I did. That name stuck with me, and having to carry it to school was something I dreaded. I was picked on, pushed around, occasionally beaten up and generally abused. I thought I was a good guy, but the way I was treated at school made you wonder. I prayed that Tommy would graduate after spending his entire school career. Tommy never showed compassion to anyone he picked on, including me. He enjoyed inflicting terror on others and was getting really good at it. After Tommy graduated from school, settled down and bought my senior year, only a few buttholes referred to me as PC Pete. I graduated with honors and was the valedictorian of my class. I attended a good college and became a design engineer. Rose, when I tried to tell my father about the problem, he said he would go to the school and take care of it. That is all I need. I expected Daddy to come to my rescue. I knew it wasn't going to help and would probably make things worse. I suggested trying it for a few more days to see if the teasing stopped. He accepted it, and I lied when he asked how school was going a few days later. At the very least, school was unpleasant. Rose fared well after the first 2 months at my new school. I'd had a really bad day by the time I got home. I was so worked up that I could be dangerous. My smaller and only brother took something from me. I still don't remember what it was. All I knew was that he was in the firing line. We started arguing with my father, who was sitting in the next room. All of the bullying and problems in my life came to a head. I pushed my brother against the wall, pointing my fist at his head. He ducked at the last second and I hit the wall with my fist. We lived in an older house and the walls were made of plaster with wood slats behind it, which caused a 3-foot hole in the wall and even broke 2 of the boards where my little brother's head had been. Dad entered the room and freaked out when he saw the damage. My brother was crying and yelling, "You could have killed your brother in your room right now. You are grounded for the next 2 months." I was grounded and still being bullied in school. Those were the 2 longest months of my life. My father taught me that my temper could get me into trouble and possibly kill someone. I knew deep down that if I'd hit my brother, I could have killed him. That lesson has stayed with me until this day. That is why I would prefer to walk away than fight. Rose. Okay, now that I've given you some background on my life, I'll explain what started about 3 months ago. I usually call home before lunch and Rose has it ready for me. I forgot to call her today. It's only a 20-minute drive each way, which is convenient given that my lunch break is only 1 hour long. I arrived at lunchtime as usual. As I walked through the door, Rose was on her hands and knees scrubbing the living room rug. Our rug had size 13-foot mud prints. The tracks appeared to lead directly from our front door to our back bedroom. Rose did. "Harry, who made such a mess on our new rug?" I asked her. "Leo, our building superintendent, hired a new guy to check the smoke alarms. He entered with dirty feet and did not wipe them off." She got back to me. The response almost sounded scripted. Rose. "Okay, but I'm going to jerk it. Leo, the first opportunity one get, we have white rugs." "If he doesn't know," I responded back. "Don't worry about it, Peter. I will talk to him. Allow me to handle everything," she told me. After that, I ate my lunch and stopped thinking about it. Rose. That week I noticed Leo emerged from one of the other apartment buildings. I summoned him over to speak with me. "Leo, how are you doing? It has been a while since we spoke." I told him we discussed sports and the weather, and I suddenly remembered what I wanted to talk to him about. Rose did. "Leo, the other day, your new guy came in to check the smoke alarms in my apartment and tracked mud from his shoes all over my lovely white rug," I informed him. "First and foremost, he is not my new guy," Leo told me with annoyance in his voice. "Sorry, Pete." He paused for a second to control his temper. "But this guy has already gotten to me, and I normally don't let anything bother me. But this guy does. His name is Tom something. It starts with a B. I don't remember. Corporate hired him after I told them I needed more assistance. He was to be my part-time man, doing the tasks I needed done," Leo informed me again. Rose Butthole arrives on the first day thinking, he is my boss. He started telling me about my and his schedules as well as how things would work around here. Leo kept telling me. I made it clear to him what his role was here and he was not pleased. He had wild eyes that suggested he could turn on you at any moment. I was about to give him his walking papers right there, but he still had that look in his eye. I believe if I fired him he would have beaten me up. Perhaps even worse. I'm going to notify corporate and have them fire him. He is a big guy who was supposed to be handy with a wrench. If you ask me, he was a great butthole from the start. Leo told me. Besides Pete, I checked the smoke detectors 3 weeks ago. I informed your wife that the 2-back smoke detectors needed new batteries. I returned and even installed them for her. Tom had no reason to test the smoke alarms. That isn't his job. Leo told me with no love in his voice, which left me wondering after I finished talking to him. However, it slipped my mind until another incident occurred a few weeks later. I was about to grab another pair of sneakers from my closet when I remembered I had left them under the bed. As I looked under my wife's side of the bed for them, I noticed a pair of muddy shoe prints in size 13 similar to the ones I saw my wife cleaning up a few weeks ago. They could only have been made if the person who wore them removed them and placed them under my bed. My wife would do that with my shoes out of habit. These appeared to be the only tracks she did not clean up. Rose on the same day. I took some socks from my drawer and realized they weren't mine. My feet were never that large. Size 13, and they were a color I never purchased. I even tried them on, and it was funny, at least it was until I seriously considered the implications. Now, how did someone else's socks end up in my sock drawer? I became increasingly concerned as I reflected on the situation. Then my neighbor Mrs. Adams, who lives directly across the hall from my apartment, asked me one morning, "Is your apartment fixed yet?" "Rose, I have no idea what you're talking about, Sally." I had no idea anything was broken in my apartment. I responded with a questioning look. "It's just that the new big fix-it guy was constantly repairing things in your apartment. You should ask your wife." She ended with a strange look at me. Her expression revealed more than I wanted to know. Sally was a busybody, but she was always aware of what was happening in the building. This could have been her way of telling me to be careful. Rose had been questioning my wife's faithfulness for several months. Nothing concrete, little things here. And it said she was cheating on me. If I answered the phone, the call would end. I thought I smelled cologne on her clothes. I asked her directly. One day she told me I was her only love. She didn't appear nervous or anything. I accepted her response and tried not to think about it anymore. I should have pressed the issue further, but I did not. I completely trusted her. When Rose reads this story, she thinks, "Boy, he sure is a dumb." But in my defense, I loved and trusted Rose. Yes, I was loved blind. I also believe that deep down I didn't want the confrontation with my wife yet. That is how things were until the day my life changed forever. I was feeling sick at work, so I left early even before lunch. I walked into my apartment and immediately knew something was wrong. We live in a one-story apartment. Our bedroom is in the back, so you can't hear if someone knocks on the front door or walks in. Rose. Day. As I began to walk back to the bedroom, I heard voices. Rose was moaning loudly. And another male voice mentioned how nice her private felt. I knew it was bad, but I wasn't sure how bad it was. I lost all love for my wife at that point. The heat didn't start until I realized who she was with. Rose, I can't believe your husband doesn't realize what a fool you are. If you were my wife, I'd lock you up whenever I left. A private like yours is one of a million. Besides, you give the best head I've ever had. You could suck a pool ball with a straw. The stranger laughed as he spoke. To Rose and Tommy. Just fudge my brains out. I don't want my husband to catch us, and he might come home for lunch. Rose informed him. Who cares, Rose? You said he was a wimp and never fought. I'll kick the crap out of him and then fudge you while he lies on the ground beneath us. Tommy bravely said, Rose, I don't want to hurt him. Rose defended me, saying that while he is passive, he is actually a good guy. Sort of. Her voice conveyed that she did not believe her own words. That really hurt more than I can express. The woman in your life thinks you're a coward and a wimp. There are no words to express how I felt to this day. I don't remember doing it. Fortunately, just as I approached the bedroom door, I turned on my small video and sound recorder. It's smaller than a cigarette lighter and wouldn't be noticeable in your shirt pocket. I rose the recorder for work. My new boss Bill was stealing my designs and calling them his own. He made me look bad in meetings so that he could look good. I began recording our conversations. My good friend suggested it. I recorded the conversation so that I could prove my boss's actions or inactions. He threw me under the bus at least once a week. He assumed I was a wimp. Tommy also threatened me while the recorder was turned on. I'd heard that voice before and it brought back a flood of memories at once. No, don't tell me it's him, I told myself. I've rose enough. I walked up to the open bedroom door and saw Tommy Ballinger, my old high school bully, screwing my wife from behind. That image will remain in my mind until I die. How do I describe how I felt at the time? I stood there watching my wife of 3 years be duped by the person I despised the most in the world. I hated my wife now, and I especially hated Tommy at that moment. I just froze and watched as he repeatedly rose my wife. I awoke from my memory nightmare and it had enough. I yelled at Rose. What do you think you're doing? Get out of my apartment. I yelled this at them both with the most rage I had ever heard in my voice. The expression on my face must have said it all at the time. I was madder than I had ever been in my life. Rose, on the other hand, had almost a so what expression on her face. Wimp. You're not going to do anything anyway, right? You never do. My wife appeared startled and surprised for only a few seconds before giving me that look. Tommy simply looked at me and began to let her carry. Rose, do not tell me that you married PC Pete, my God. I thought I had a reason to worry. He replied to my wife, laughing even harder. She questioned Tommy, trying to make sense of my new nickname. Rose, your loser of a husband attended my high school. He peed his pants. This was the first time we ever met. He clearly did not tell her how we met. He only included that small amount of information to make me look bad in front of my wife. My wife looked at me as if I were less than a man. So it worked. I would beat him up once a week. He rose to small amount of crap with him. When I am finished screwing your wife's privates, buttocks and mouth, then you can take over for an actual man. Until then, wait outside until I finish. He gave me an order. My wife just looked back and forth between us without saying anything. I knew right then that I'd never marry this woman after today. By the way, PC Pete, I'm on the clock right now and my salary is derived from your rent payments. To add insult to injury, you are literally paying me to deceive your wife right now. How does that feel, you little crap? Tommy bragged to me as he asked me the last question. He returned to my wife and began to fudge her again. She simply looked away. Rose will Say this only once. Get out of my apartment. I yelled at him. I was prepared for whatever Tommy had to offer me. I was enraged at that moment. I was almost shaking from rage. Well, PC Pete has a set of balls, he remarked sarcastically. I will take care of that. I gave you a chance to leave. Wimp. Now I'm going to give you a beating like you never received in high school. Tommy told me this as he pulled his privates out of my wife, got off the bed and approached me in the doorway. It's funny, but sometimes you see an old friend from school and you still believe they're the same person you went to school with. Tommy made a mistake after high school. One of my college teachers encouraged me to take martial arts classes to boost my self-esteem. I developed an interest in it and began to train in judo, kickboxing, and various forms of karate. I'd work out at the kickboxing club twice a week and go to the gym at least once. I have followed that routine every week for the past 6 years. Rose never went with me, so she assumed I used the stepper or something at the gym. However, I would spare at least twice a week. Initially, my teachers struggled to persuade me to spare with someone. I could still see my brother's terrified expression when I attempted to punch him all those years ago. They told me it was like learning to read, but never picking up a book. An excellent analogy, I thought. Finally, I started sparring and got quite good at it. I would pull my punches and never intended to hurt anyone. They claimed that my strength was in my speed. I could throw a mean punch if I wanted to, but the past came back to haunt me all at once. I considered running away for a split second. The little boy terrorized by the big bully remained somewhere in me, but something more powerful was emerging. All of my anger and rage had been stored inside of me for years. Suddenly burst out, my bear. Tommy attacked me with a powerful punch. He moved very slowly for his size. I moved to the right 6, and he completely missed me. That's when I went after him. I pushed up on his elbow as I struck the top of his wrist in hand. This action caused his elbow to snap with an unpleasant crack. I didn't care. I was just getting started. After crying out in pain, he attempted to lunge at me with his remaining good arm and body. I just stepped aside and directed his entire weight into the doorframe. I was standing next to his head and hit it with another crunch. While my wife was screaming from the bed, she was still hiding under the covers, only her head peeking out. I ignored her and went about my business. Tommy got up again. I was impressed, but he was not bright enough to stay down like he should have. I moved to the center of the room where I had a clear fighting space. If Tommy had been standing, I doubt I could have reached him with my foot, but he was slightly bent over, so I spun around and hit him with the hardest roundhouse kick I've ever done. My wingtip shoes pushed several teeth from his mouth and blood also came out. He screamed and I used the split-second delay to launch my knee into his chest, where he was bent over holding his mouth with his only good arm. I could feel several of his ribs crack, and I'd had enough of this nonsense. I swiped his legs with mine and he fell down immediately. I recall my instructor telling me that if you take an enemy down, keep him down. I jumped on his 2 ankles with all of my weight and felt at least one crank. I delivered several well-placed kicks to his nuts and I could feel them squished as my fancy dress shoes did their job. He was still naked and moaning when I kicked him in the head. The room fell silent except for Tommy's low, quiet moan. I couldn't resist the urge to give him a matching set, so I broke his other arm in 2 spots. I also jumped on his kneecaps to make myself feel better. It greatly improved my attitude toward Tommy. Now that's adding insult to injury. I told him this as I kicked him in the side of the head again, causing him to pass out. What I did may appear cruel, but I never remember Tommy giving anyone a break or simply leaving an unfortunate student alone. He was a complete butthole and I felt no mercy for him. He was an enemy of the worst kind and I treated him accordingly. Carrie was looking at me with fear and wonder. I hadn't raised a finger in front of her in the entire time she'd known me, not even when other men attempted to pick her up. Sometimes I believed she did it on purpose to see what I would do. She actually thought I was a wimp. I could tell by the look on her face that she didn't think about it anymore. She just saw me kick the crap out of a guy who had over 800 lies about me every time you flirted with other guys in front of me. I understood what you were doing. One time at the downtown bar, I didn't think you wanted me to take you away from one of those apes. So if you've ever wondered if that other guy was bigger or stronger than me, he probably is. And I could just point to all the losers. The same thing I did with your butthole boyfriend, you see, in Carrie. A real man can walk away from a fight and know he could have won. When I was younger, I almost killed my little brother, Billy, and I learned how to control my temper. That's what a real man does. He acts like a man, not the crap that butthole on the floor was doing. You made the classic mistake, Rose. Never confused kindness with weakness. I informed my wife. I've always treated you with love and respect. That time has passed forever. Rose, you are a cheater. And I want you to leave once I am gone. I don't care where you go or what you're doing. If I see you in this apartment again, I'll make what I did to your boyfriend look like childish behavior. I told her this with the most rage I had ever felt towards her. She simply looked at me with large, saucer-shaped eyes and said nothing. I turned and left my apartment without saying anything. I wouldn't touch her again. Tommy Bellinger had put his privates in her. Never ever. I returned to work for some strange reason that felt more like home than my own apartment. About a half hour later, the cops arrived and took me downtown. Word spread quickly that I kicked a big guy's buttocks and sent him to the emergency room. I didn't get a scratch or a good workout from the fight I gave Tommy. I told my boss, Bill, as the cops led me away in handcuffs. You're up next, you backstabbing piece of crap. I'll be back. I told him this with the same rage I felt toward Rose. He appeared terrified. After hearing the rumors about the big guy, I just got beat up. I remained downtown for the rest of the day until a close friend posted my bail. I returned to work and went to find my boss. I figured since I was already in deep trouble, I might as well clean house. When I got there, I was told he had quit and would not be returning. The company's president then summoned me to his office for a brief private conversation. Peter, I admire your work. But you cannot go around beating up people and threatening my employees. He informed me. I explained what happened in my apartment and what my boss was up to. I even told him I had video proof that he was stealing my designs and ideas. He said nothing but smiled. Peter, I always knew you had a strong personality beneath that mask. Bill, your boss was in butthole. And it was only a matter of time before he left. You actually did me a favor. By the way, you are the only one I know who creates 3 completely different designs for budget-conscious clients, complete with material and labor estimates. When Bill presented your ideas as his own, I knew he was a liar, taking credit for another's work. Yours, he said this with an even bigger smile. Here's the name of my lawyer. He's very good, so he should help you with both your assault case and your divorce. When this is all over and you are not in jail, you will have a job waiting for you. Until then, you must stay away from here until everything is resolved. Peter, did you really kick these big guys? But who was sleeping with your wife? He asked me with a bigger smile. Mike? Yeah, but it only took about 2 minutes. It was not much of a workout. I told him, laughing. Okay, Peter, good luck and keep me updated. He finally said something to me before I shook his hand and left. I returned to my apartment and it was empty. Carrie had taken all of her clothes and necessities. I didn't care what she took. Then, in an excited, panicked moment, I dashed to the bedroom and looked around. Sure enough, there it was by the side of the dresser. Still recording with my small pocket recorder. Well, that brings me back to my current situation. Sitting in a courtroom, waiting for 12 strangers to tell me where I'll be eating lunch for the next 6 to 10 years. I take whatever came my way and didn't expect to be acquitted. I really messed Tommy up. I was charged with several legal sounding terms that essentially meant you kicked him, but they read a long list of Tommy's injuries. It was not enjoyable at all. If I started at the top and worked my way down, I'd find a large cut on his head. Punctured eardrum, concussion, broken jaw, missing teeth both north and south. Broken shoulder, 2 broken arms, 1 broken wrist, 7 broken ribs, 1 missing testicle, 2 shattered kneecaps, 1 broken leg, 1 broken ankle, 1 sprained ankle and 4 broken toes. Every time he was brought into court, he was in a wheelchair completely bandaged. I should have felt pity, but I couldn't find it. This man didn't deserve any. I'd laugh to myself and call him my new nickname. I gave him Toothless Tommy. I tried to be serious and calm in court. The jury still had a difficult time seeing me. A 5/7 design architect weighing 185 elbows is severely beating up this massive 6'3" big guy. I looked up and saw the jury enter and sit down. The foreman remained standing. The bailiff summoned everyone to order and the judge inquired whether the jury had reached a verdict. Yes, we do, Your Honor. The head jury foreman informed the court and the judge that we found the defendant not guilty of all charges. He addressed the room as it erupted in noise and commotion. He looked at me and winked. I had to do a double take to process what I just witnessed. The president of my company then turned around and congratulated me, telling me to take the rest of the week off before returning to work on Monday. I shook his hand and received hugs from my friends and other well-wishers. Even Leo was there, congratulating me and giving Tommy the finger as he looked over. Tommy's expression was priceless. I exited the courtroom with my lawyer. I looked at Tommy and gave him the finger myself to make him feel better. He seemed like he wanted to kick my buttocks again. But his mind was busy writing checks. His body couldn't cash. I smiled as I exited the courtroom. A free man. As I was leaving the hallway, I noticed the jury's head foreman standing behind me. He motioned for me to approach and talk to him. Hello, Mr. Huckabee. My name is Harry Peterson. I'm glad you got off on all charges. Like everyone on the jury believed you were acting in self-defense. On a personal level, you had nothing to worry about. That is why I took the job as foreman. I wanted to make sure you were free. The video recording of the event provided the proof we both required. He confessed to me, his voice low. Why do you want to do that for me? I asked him this as he smiled at me and extended his hand to shake my might. Mr. Huckabee, I was a year ahead of you. When you attended my high school, Tommy picked on me until my mother transferred me to another school. He made my life miserable for the entire time I was there. That stupid crap had bullied a lot of people. He didn't remember me at all. I witnessed what he used to do to you too. He eventually got what he deserved, however. Peter, best of luck in the future. Remember, not all assholes win. Just ask Tommy. He said this as he walked away from me with a big smile on his face. My wife came up to me just after that and wanted to know if we could talk. I told her no and said she should move on with her life because I was going to also. I do love you, Rose, but I can never love you again. It hurts too bad to say in words. With that, I turned away and left her standing there in the hallway. The recording I made showed Tommy making fun of me and not leaving the apartment. When I asked him to, my wife said nothing. So the jury took that to mean she agreed with me. Tommy was asked to leave a second time. Again, no response from Rose. And then he attacked me. You can see the fight up until he gets thrown into the doorframe by me. The recorder went flying face down by the dresser. After that, I watched the playback and listened to the audio of when the cops came in. My wife said I started it and that I beat up Tommy for revenge. You could later hear her saying to herself how she was going to talk to me and what lies she was going to tell. I could hear her making up a new story as she went along. She never even seemed to be sorry about cheating on me. The good thing about Tommy's recording that day was that he admitted he was doing non-work duties while on the clock. So his work insurance from the apartment complex would not help him. He was beat up and shut out. I heard he had to go to a physical rehab place out of town. He would never be the same again. His family had to foot the bill also. Well, I was in for some surprises when I got back to work on that. Following Monday, my office was cleaned out and my stuff was moved to my old boss, Bill's office. I now had Bill's old job and was my own boss now. That was sweeter than sweet. Also around the office, the women started to take notice of me and at least 4 came up to me my first week as boss and asked me out on a date. They asked me out. Can you believe it? I found out later that the president was telling people I was a retired Special Forces guy who was a spy for the government. Part-time between designs. The women in my office all eat it up and I am now looked at with some kind of mystery and intrigue. Imagine that. Rose and I are now divorced and I have been seeing some women at work and a few outside. I miss her. But just the thought of Tommy's privates in her is enough to never want to see her again. I appreciate each and every one of you listening to the story today. If you liked what you heard, don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Additionally, leave a comment below reflecting on what transpired. Please do not hesitate to get in touch with me if you have a story to tell about your own circumstances or those of someone else. Take care.